Hey Misfits, it's Elise. Welcome back to my channel of collaboration with my friends. I don't know, I'm mixing this shit up. Anyway, I was filming in my kitchen, but my dad ruined it because he came in the door and started talking to me. So let's start this over again. I am going to work, so put some makeup on. So today's just something I want to talk about, something that happened to me 3 years ago that came up on my Facebook timeline, and why did I do that? I can't see. So I thought I would talk about it. I don't know, it's therapeutic to me. It may not benefit anyone else, but here we are. Anyway, so if you do not know me, hi, I'm Elise. I have a bachelor's degree in music that I basically use as toilet paper. I was in a master's degree program to become a music teacher, and I got screwed and kicked out of my internship, and I quit school, and I realized after all that bullshit I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. So that's the short end of it. So I had 2 teaching gigs. So I had one January to the end of February of to January and February of 2017, which is the story I'm going to be talking about mostly. But then after that, half a semester went by or whatever, and then I got accepted into grad school. I did half a semester at grad school, and I was at this hoity-toity white people school, but basically, they were pulling illegal shit, and, I was subbing special ed and doing stuff I'm not supposed to be doing, and literally, they just called me mentally unstable and unfit to teach children, and they used my YouTube channel against me. I got kicked out of the internship, and they tried to get me to stay in the program at school and just pay for it, and I'm like, fuck no. So I left on medical leave of absence. I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I'm now medicated. That's 2 years, almost 3 years late, but, so I finally figured out that maybe it's not me. Maybe I just don't need to be doing this. And I've grown a lot since then. But this story is mostly going to focus on the events of the job of me teaching before the internship, which I was a reading specialist or a peer reading teacher at a charter school. It was a middle school. Well, it was a middle and high school in the same building, but I taught in the middle school. Oh my god. That's hysterical. I knocked my glasses off. So it's mostly going to focus on that. But I am going to talk about that other one too, because it happened right after. So enjoy. Alright, I need time. So this teaching job, I did it from January 2nd or 3rd, I think, or something like that, until beginning of March, I think, was when I put it on Facebook, but the 27th or the 28th of February was when I was let go from this teaching job. Now, I got this from my mom, basically, because I took a semester off from school because I had gotten my bachelor's a semester early. I went to school, and did 17 credits a semester, and I did summer classes. I think I even did a winter class, right? So I graduated before everyone else. So I was supposed to be in the master's program a semester early, but I messed up with praxis scores because basically the first time I didn't know my ID couldn't be expired. Then the second praxis, which was the deadline, I needed to have it in by or else I can't get into that program. I had lost my ID in Rhode Island. It turns out it was in my friend's car, but he couldn't get it to me that early in the morning. So I got fucked out of praxis twice. So I literally was gonna take praxis the next month. I made a stupid YouTube video about it, which basically got me kicked out of my internship. But anyway, so I had this period of what am I gonna do? Just work 20 hours a week at Target and just sit at home? What the fuck? So I ended up getting this teaching job through my mom's clients, I guess, because she's a preschool teacher, and their kids went there. They literally had 4 kids, and they were very good to my sister and my mom because she raised all her damn kids. So you know, like, oh, like, my school's looking for, like, peer reading instructors, and you don't need any prior experience in education, which should have been a red flag. Red flag number one. And they're like, they prefer if you have, like, a bachelor's and, like, an education background, but it's not required. What the fuck? Okay, so my mom told me about it, and she's like, because I don't drive, she's like, literally, if you come to work with me in the morning and wait for them to pick up their kids, they'll bring you to school. You just gotta do the interview. I'm like, okay, sure. It's like, it's a temporary program anyway, so like, just see how it goes. I'm like, okay, Mom, whatever. Right, so I go to the interview, and the principal of the high school and the middle school, because I guess he's like the head principal, he liked me. And basically, like, my experience with kids was volunteering, whether it be in cosplay or at my mom's school, and I used to babysit kids, but like I was going to school to be a music teacher, and it's just I didn't have the test scores in time for practice, and like I was the most qualified out of the 3 they hired, but somehow I got kicked out, right? Anyway, I gotta blend this right here. So, you know, I get hired, and it's like 7 to 10 kids in your group, and you guys are supposed to follow this thing. It's called Fontes and Pinnell, and it's basically like to get you up to grade level, because these kids were under the state level for math and reading. I don't know what color I want. Someone comment down below. You can get this one at Walmart. It's, what is that? Profusion. So yeah, so I got hired to do reading, obviously, because I don't know how to teach math. Math is awful. Math is mental torture. But, right, so I get hired for this, and basically to put in these extra classes, they took away art and gym. Because it's a charter school, they can do that, but that's fucked up, okay? Now you're punishing the kids because they don't understand. Like, in layman's terms, because we do what's called No Child Left Behind in this country, which means they pass you regardless of if you can do the skills or not, these kids, like, they're 18 and they can barely read, but oh, we finished, they went to school. Great idea. I think I'm gonna do orange and yellow today. Right, so some of my kids were in 7th and 8th grade, and they read at a 2nd grade level, which is really bad. Like, how are you gonna understand, like, tax forms and shit? Like, not everyone could be R. Kelly and be illiterate, you know, and make money. He's a bad example, but you know what I mean. So, this is awful. So, like, I'm like, this is a great thing. Because, like, I'm dyslexic, I have dyscalculia, and, like, I had trouble reading, but I was also one of the strongest readers in my grade once I figured out my way of understanding reading in school, because I diagnosed myself with dyslexia in high school, and that really was like, hey, no wonder why I sucked at this shit in elementary and middle school. But like, yet I was one of the gifted kids. I was supposed to go to the what do you call that, like the Alps program. I was supposed to be an Alpie, but I remember my mom said I had to change schools, and I'm like, fuck that. I already get bullied here. Why would I change schools? Right, so, you know, and they liked that, and it really worked with some of my kids, and it was like, you had to follow this thing, and you had to test them once a week, and the idea was for them to read in class silently, and then you would all do an activity together, but that's stupid, because everyone reads at a different speed. And then, okay, have them read at home. None of them do their homework. Half of their parents didn't even know that they had a reading, like, course, even though they were emailed about it. I remember one of my kids misbehaved really bad, and I'm like, okay, I need to talk to your, like, your uncle or whatever, like, whoever they lived with. They're like, they have a reading class? I'm like, oh my god, you got emailed about this in December, Jared, or, like, whatever the name of the adult was. Right, so, and there was no repercussions to these kids if they misbehaved in my class, and that was also a problem. And they knew this. These kids, like, they're middle schoolers. Like, of course they're gonna give you shit. They're middle school kids. I feel bad for my middle school band director. We used to be so mean to him. I was also scared of my parents, though. These kids were not. They're like, I get beat at home and shit, Miss C, but, like, it's fine. Like, like, they tell me I'm white and I don't know what they talking about their hard-ass life. I'm like, listen, you're 12. Okay, you are 12. You act like you are 40 years old and you've been out of jail 6 times. Like, Jimmy, calm the hell down. Like, I had kids in DCF custody. Like, they were bad. Some of them were. But, like, I reached a lot of my kids and they were reading a lot better. It's just their test scores weren't going up. Because they hated the class. Of course they weren't going to do well. A lot of them were doing it out of spite. Like, they fucking told me. And I'm like, you know, like, my job's in jeopardy, right? Like, thanks. Right, so that was a thing. So, about 2 months into my job, I remember this because I bought a camera with my tax return. I was still working at Target nights and weekends. And I remember I used to get pulled in the office because my kids were too loud and I didn't have good classroom management, but they knew from the jump I didn't know how to control kids like that because it was like my first real teaching job. I was still pretty soft-spoken at the time. Like, now I just freaking scream. But, like, back then I wasn't sure of myself, you know. I had learned a lot about myself about a year later. I got out of a bad relationship, all this other stuff. But, you know, so I wasn't the girl I am now. And, like, you know, like, there was some growth that needed to be done, and maybe it wasn't in time, and maybe that's why the position was eliminated and I got canned. But, you know, so I get pulled into the office in, like, 7th period. My last set of kids, you know, halfway through I get pulled down in the principal's office. Right, and literally, you know, they're like, hey, this ain't working out, like, we're letting you go. And I'm like, well, is it me or the program? And they're like, well, it's you. And I'm like, nani? Like, what? And then, you know, they're like, well, you don't have good classroom management, your kids are loud, you know, they're giving me all the hullabaloo. I was still working at Target, and they're like, you know, part of the problem is you have another job, and it's not working because you're not preparing enough, like, for your lessons. Like, you know, I feel like if you just quit and worked one job, it would be fine. And I remember that conversation, and I remember I laughed at the guy. I'm like, I'm saving for school because my parents don't pay my fucking bills. Like, I was 21 or 22 at the time. And I'm like, I'm glad that, like, your parents helped you out in college. My parents can't afford to be like that, okay? Like, you know, so that was great. So they made me cry, and I'm like, how the fuck am I going to pay my rent? Because I remember I started paying more rent to my family. I just bought a $700 camera that I, like, couldn't really return. Let me see where I'm at with this. This one's way too far up. I kind of fucked up, but it's not bad. I think I can fix it. This one? No, I have another one. I just don't know what I did with it. So, I remember just being so down on myself and that I, like, basically failed my family. Because I was the youngest child, and I was supposed to be the last hope, the one that goes to college and makes all the money. And because I had a thing, literally 8th grade, I promised my dead grandmother that I was going to take care of my parents, and, like, so they can't be in a nursing home, because, like, my grandmother died in a nursing home. Due to neglect in the nursing home, which, like, my mom couldn't be there 25/8, you know, she would come after work or on a Saturday to see her mother dying, right? So, you know, I had all these things that I wanted to do, and I was trying to prepare my future for that, right? And it's like, I failed, oh my god. Like, I had never really failed before, and it was like culture shock to me, because I'm like, oh my god, the fuck do I do now? I need a paintbrush, that's what I need, probably. And I remember just being so down on myself, and now looking at it, I remember, because, like, one conversation was about how, like, oh, well, you should quit your other job or cut your hours so that you could prepare for this job, and I'm like, I'm preparing. Do you not see the results that are happening with these children? It's not working. And I guess they didn't like that. They didn't like that my kids always came to me with life problems and just always like needed advice, or basically I was the cool teacher, and they were freaking jealous. Let's be honest. So I was the closest to their age, because like they were 12 or 13. I was like 21 or 22, so it's like, well, you shouldn't have hired a 20-year-old if you're insensitive, okay? Or what's the word, threatened? Incompetent? There we go, incompetent. You know about yourself, like, that ain't my problem. I really gotta fix this up there. You know, so I remember thinking, fuck, I really failed, but the way I looked at it was, this isn't my field, this was just some job I was gonna do for a semester, and then be like, deuces, I'm out, it's been real. I missed the money, because even as a manager at Walgreens, those checks were much higher. I thought she needed something, but I guess she just wanted to say hi. You know, like, at the end of it, I was all heartbroken and shit that I failed myself, and like, I missed the money. Definitely, because the money was great. Like, it was taxed, but like very minimal, and it's just like, it was good ass money. So like, I was making like $2,000 extra, like $3,000 more a month, basically, almost $1,500 to $2,000 a check. Like, it was fucking good. I mean, some of my kids threw chairs at me and other shit, but at the end of the day, like, I was making my coin. And I just took it as, okay, they liked the guy that was a gym teacher because he knows how to yell at kids. He was in the army. And then the other teacher, I don't know. And then there was a third teacher who was like our head teacher, I guess you could call her. I was gonna do eyeliner today, but I really don't think that's gonna work out today, so I'll do that tomorrow. Curler. You know, like, she's good at it. We got thrown into this curriculum we don't believe in. And all this other shit. But now realizing, years later, it was a shitty job. They put us in a shitty position. They basically put us against the kids. Like, oh, let's take away something they actually like to do because their test scores suck. I learned a lot about No Child Left Behind during that endeavor, because some of these kids had like a 3rd grade education basically, and they're in middle school. Like, I had kids in DCF custody. Like, literally a kid told me, you know, my parents got arrested for selling like drugs, and they took bricks of drugs out of my house, and like for like months I was living alone with my siblings that were in elementary school, and like this kid was 12. Fucking 12. And like, he had bad behavioral issues, and he literally would come in my class and disrupt it, but like I would say, hey, you want to sit down and read a book with us? Or, you know, like, actually try and help the kid and not just scream at him. And apparently, you know, he liked me even though I wasn't his teacher. I had kids cry the next day when they said Miss C was no longer working here. One of my problem children, his name was Kevin. He literally had ADHD, but he loved my class, and literally he'd behave if he got to sit next to me. Like, sometimes you just gotta like figure it out, you know? Every child like has different needs. And I also just got an eye-opening of, holy crap, there's so many people who parent that actually don't want their kids. And I just thought most people like either like really wanted kids or all this, and it's like I talked to some of their parents via email, and it's just like they didn't even know their kids had a reading class, and like, who the fuck are you? And they're talking to me like really unprofessionally. I'm like, first of all, I'm their teacher. Second of all, what the fuck? You have a child and you're not taking care of their needs. Hello? There's behavioral problems at school, and I need you to talk to your kid. And they're like, oh, I can't control my kid. Excuse me, yes you can. You're their fucking parent. like, all my kids were upset about it, so it's like, at the end of the day, there's literally like 2 of my kids that like, we talk about anime and stuff, because I had them last period, so when they were waiting for the buses and shit, we would talk about Black Butler and stuff like that. I had their Facebook, they had a Kik group chat that I was in. I don't know why. I think it was because one of the girls was getting abused at home, and I just wanted to make sure she was fucking okay, right? So, they're like, yo, like, we rebelled when Mrs. So-and-so subbed our class. And I'm like, first of all, you're supposed to be learning. Like, I understand y'all are upset. Totally understand. I appreciate the gesture, but y'all need to do for yourselves, okay? Like, why are you doing this? Like, this is the opposite of what I want y'all to do. But literally, they told me that, like, basically, whoever subbed my classes or whatever for that thing, they're like, all of us fucking ripped them a new one. Like, we came in not really liking you, but, like, you were, like, a realistic person and this, that, and the other thing. So it's like, I know I made a difference. I know I did my job. I realized that now that I'm on, like, anxiety medication and I have more control of my life and I'm in a better place emotionally, that job was to set people up to fail. And it was basically if you do well, great. If not, oh well, it doesn't affect me kind of job. The school did not care about these kids at all. They just cared about their state funding. And then after, like, my internship fiasco, where I was called mentally unstable and I was kicked out of my program, I really didn't want to be a teacher anyway. I was done. Sorry, my dad was talking to me. This looks good. I'm gonna leave that alone. Like, so basically the job was, from the jump, was a failure. Sorry, he was talking to me. So I learned that the job was, sometimes you just get put in a shitty position and it's not your fault. Don't beat yourself over stupid shit, and at the end of the day, that was not my path, and I'm glad that that's no longer my struggle. I kind of want to put blush, or use eyeshadow as blush, so I think I'm going to do that. Yeah, 'cause the rest looks fine. Yeah, so now that I'm, like, in a better place emotionally, and now that I'm, like, actually medicated on anxiety medication, I feel a lot better. And it's like some of the behaviors that I exhibited that maybe people said I was mentally unstable, or that, basically that I'm wrong, was because I had a chemical imbalance, and I was trying to figure out what it was, and I did not have a grip on myself like I do now. I'm gonna fix that, don't worry. Like, at the end of it, it was a life experience, and literally, like, none of it was my fault, so don't beat yourself up over stupid shit, and sometimes things aren't just meant to be, because I literally remember wanting to kill myself, and that, like, I failed my family. My mom tried to get me in a Catholic school, like, literally right after that, and I told them, I'm not doing any jobs that you recommend me for, because it just doesn't seem to work. Like, I love y'all, and I love what you do. You're my parents, but this is not it. Oh, I need a brush for this, and I know I have one. I don't have it here. I'll use this one brush. See if that makes a difference. Oh, that's helping. So, at the end of it, I've grown a lot as a person, especially when I was kicked out of my internship for being mentally unstable and unfit to teach children, which I wasn't. It's just my kids were wrestling and I didn't learn how to discipline children. And why was I subbing literally like the second or third day of my internship? Why was I subbing special ed and all this stuff that I'm not certified for? Oh, but it's my fault because I'm mentally unstable, right? Now, obviously, if you fuck up, you need to take responsibility, but I just made poor decisions in regards to my career. You know, like, put some of this on. Oh, that's working. Why didn't I do this before? Baby powder. I know it's not comedogenic, but whatever. Now I smell pretty. So it's like, listen, if the world's beating you down, don't beat yourself down anymore. And if you made a difference or did what you were supposed to do, you don't need to feel guilty about it. You know, it's just, at the end of it, you survived. I learned that, you know, a lot of people just come from bad homes or parents aren't actual parents. And that teaching was not for me, especially after that second debacle. This first one, I'm like, oh, this is because it's not my major. It's just not meant to be type of thing. And my mom's like, yeah, that's true, and you're teaching it, and the kids are bad, and you know, all that. Some people just have shitty dispositions that they're born in. That's what I took it as. Like, a lot of these kids, the system failed them, and then I taught in hoity-toity white people land, and it's even worse. They have iPhone X's and they don't behave. Like, I felt bad more for the kids because, you know, like a 12-year-old telling me his parents got in jail for selling like black tar heroin and they had to fend for their siblings. I feel more bad for them than the 5th grader who freaking has everything they want and they still complain about their parents, you know? So it's just, I learned a lot about myself and why I am how I am, and now I'm more self-aware, but back then I was not in control of that. So take care of yourself, and if just something seems wrong, you need to speak up. I was just trying to be a good teacher and seem like an adult. I was trying to impress, why was I trying to impress these adults? They didn't give a fuck about me. I thought everyone would be cool, like, because I knew a lot of teachers back at my high school, like, were friends, and everybody was cool, and oh, like, I'm going to Mrs. So-and-so's house and we're going to play bingo. I just realized that that's not realistic, right? That teachers can be friends if you are great, but a lot of them have shitty attitudes. When I went to the hoity-toity school, they made fun of me because my parents made my lunch and shit, and that they ironed my clothes, but I was also working 80 hours a week and I didn't drive, and I still went to school 3 nights a week. So, you know, at the end of it, I was working harder than they were, and they were jealous of me and just making fun of me. And when I would say that I was being treated poorly, and I think it's because of my age, they're like, no, we don't do that here. And then they're literally making fun of me in the next room. Like, okay. Or I'm just imagining everything, sure. So I've grown. I've learned just to not beat myself up over shit anymore. Like, I still do, but I do a lot less now because it's not worth it. Life is too short. Like, sometimes when stuff don't work out, you just gotta do something else, even if you don't like it. Like, I was pissed about going back to retail. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Mainly because my college professor would say, oh, what are you gonna do, work retail the rest of your life? That doesn't pay the bills. I'm sorry. A Walmart manager, like, of the store makes $80,000 to $181,000 a year. That's more than you'll ever make, Frank. So, at the end of it, I learned something, and I hope y'all learned something from this. My makeup's kind of trash, but I also look cute, so I'm gonna go. See you guys next week. Bye.